It's a pretty strange notion to assert that the aim of a genre works most effectively outside of said genre, but it's not as outlandish as it sounds. The aim of horror is to scare the viewer, to convey fear from the screen or the page into the hearts of willing participants. And that is exactly where it falls short. The participants are willing. When you turn on The Thing or open up Frankenstein, you know on some level what you're getting into. You expect the scares and can somewhat prepare for it, and in the words of the Latter-day Saints, if ye are prepared, ye shall not fear. So to feel real horror, to truly get frightened, we need to look elsewhere. And this is why I assert that horror, where it shouldn't be, is one of the most effective methods to scare the participant. For my Halloween special, this is what I'll focus on. Firstly, examples from my own life, of games, films, TV shows that honestly rocked me to my own core. Then in the second segment, I'll explain further a little on my original claim. Just stating this here because originally I was going to give a little segment of analysis after every example, but it got kind of repetitive, so I've saved it all to the end. I would just like to add, as this is the Halloween themed video, you might be expecting some cheap jump scare, and I just want to promise you, there's no jump scares in this video. I think they're cheap and I hate them, so I would never do something like that. And with all of that out of the way, let us look at horror where it shouldn't be. The first example I want to talk about is first-gen Pokemon, specifically Lavender Town. I cannot overstate how much 11-year-old me loved Lavender Town. If for some reason you're unaware of Lavender Town and the surrounding story, I'll run through it quickly. So in Pokemon Red and Blue, released in 1996, there's this area called Lavender Town. A quiet hamlet with one peculiarity. A 7-foot tower acts as a graveyard for deceased Pokemon, looming over the village as a symbol of fate. A grim reminder that not even these happy-go-lucky creatures of this world can escape their eventual demise. The citizens are rumoured to have seen ghostly apparitions, and a general gloom hangs over the town, exacerbated by the dull colour palette, the whites and greys only broken up by washed shades of purple. A colour which in Pokemon is associated with ghosts, poison and darkness. But what we're really focusing on here is the song that plays upon entering the town. The melody you're listening to right now. As the story goes, the high pitches and binaural beats of the tune, which could only be heard by children, drove Japanese youths to insanity, reports of headaches, insomnia, and in the worst case, suicide. It was claimed that over 100 children had taken their lives due to the Lavender Town theme, and so it was named Lavender Town Syndrome. Now this is obviously fake, another creepypasta hoax from the early days of the internet, but that didn't stop me and many others from being deathly afraid of it. This led me down a rabbit hole of Pokemon theories and dark secrets, like how Drifloon, which is one of my favourite Pokemon, kidnaps and kills kids, and the whole Hypno's lullaby stuff, especially this video, the song, the vocals and the image. I would be kept up at night thinking anthropomorphic Hypno was going to come into my room and snatch me. Genuinely, whoever made that video, I hope the very worst for you. I'm still yet to listen past the first 2 lines of this song. There's a specific type of horror that really gets under my skin, and that's people being unaware that what they're doing is setting up their deaths, or other people's deaths. One example I can think of from my childhood that broke me, like mentally destroyed 8-year-old me, comes from Independence Day. In the scene where the aliens have just shown up and people are gathered atop the IBM building to welcome the aliens, with peace and open arms. There's joy in the air and people are excited to meet these extraterrestrials, and then they're massacred by a laser coming from the ship. Now this scene made me cry for a couple of hours. I think the principle kinda holds true with Lavender Town. The creators at Game Freak had no idea what their music would do, nor did the unsuspecting kids who just wanted to play the new game that everyone was talking about. But now their decisions and actions, decisions they were completely oblivious to, has sealed their fate. As I'm writing this, I'm realizing that horror affects me massively when people are locked into a path they didn't choose. I guess it's more empathy than fear, which is probably why Hereditary did such a number on me. Staying on the path of gaming, The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask. Now I was never lucky enough to play Majora's Mask in my childhood, but I was old enough to watch Matt Pack Game Theory's video on it, Is Link Dead in Majora's Mask? The theory goes that Link is dead throughout Majora's Mask, and each area links up to one of the Kubler-Ross stages of grief, which is actually how I found out about the grief model and got to impress my grief counselor with when I was like 10. The areas and stages are as follows. Clock Town represents denial, the Deku Palace represents anger, Snowhead represents bargaining and doubling up with depression alongside the Great Bay, and finally, Ikana Valley represents acceptance. Now Majora's Mask alone is creepy enough without all the death aspects. Link being turned into a Deku scrub, the torture of the innocent monkey, and that god-forbidden mask salesman still haunts my dreams. Again, like Lavender Town, there's something in the air that's really poignant when you play Majora's Mask, like you can feel the gloom seeping through the screen. I'm not sure if this is just me, but it captures the same type of unnerving that I get from Lynch's work. Bright on the surface, but with that overwhelmingly dark underbelly that's just waiting to burst through. Instead of enjoying the adventure for what it is, the beautiful scenery and the complex characters, in the back of your mind you can never fully block out the moon prepared to slam into the ground, killing everyone in an instant. Paired that with something like the grief theory, it turns this unnerving and melancholic setting to a much grimmer tone, riddled with death and existential despair. On the complete flip side of that, we can find another source of childhood trauma, that being the 2011 web series Don't Hug Me I'm Scared. As I've grown, I've come to absolutely adore this series. I can probably recite some of the songs off by heart, especially the third Love Call episode, which is by far the best episode, no discussion. But for the purpose of this video, I'm going to focus on the first episode, creativity. Don't Hug Me I'm Scared starts off as a light-hearted children's show, akin to something like Sesame Street with fake backgrounds and puppet characters. But as it descends, you get the feeling that something is very, very wrong. Whether that's through the clown painting being covered in oil, or being told to listen to the voices in your brain. This all culminates in a nightmarish sequence of the three characters getting a bit too creative, breaking down and using real flesh to create, all while violins emerge from the soundtrack playing a grating, ear-splitting tone. The entire lure and reveal of Don't Hug Me I'm Scared has been talked about to death, so I won't spend too much time on it, but for children finding it, unaware of the horror they're about to witness, it sticks with you. I remember being too scared to walk across my landing because I thought the flesh cake was just gonna be there. Or one time I was sleeping in the back of a van and I was deathly afraid that the red guy was walking outside, specifically from the 5th episode where he's wearing the trench coat and holding a briefcase. I think Don't Hug Me I'm Scared is kind of an outlier in the examples that I've given, as it is created for the horror genre unlike the two previous entries, but the experience of finding it lines up with what I'm trying to state. On the topic of children's media, Dumbo, released in 1941 by Walt Disney. Dumbo is a pretty upbeat movie about an elephant learning to live to his true potential. Why am I talking about the Disney movie here? Well, for some people that are familiar with the film, you might be expecting me to bring up some of the earlier scenes, where Dumbo is separated from his mother after she attacks circus goers for mocking and tormenting her son. But no, there's a much worse scene in this, a scene that plagued me as a young child, and that is the pink elephants. So after clowns knock a bottle of champagne into Dumbo's drinking water, he and Timothy Q. Mouse start hallucinating pink elephants, singing and dancing. Looking back at it, it was definitely Disney trying to show off how impressive their animation had become, but for a child, it's a pure psychedelic nightmare trip. Let me just read you some of the lyrics from their songs. Look out, pink elephants on parade. Here they come, they're here and there, pink elephants everywhere. Look out, they're walking around the bed, on their head. I am not the type to faint when things are odd or things are quaint, but seeing things you know that ain't can certainly give you an awful fright. What a sight, chase 'em away, I'm afraid, need your aid, pink elephants on parade. It's clearly told through the lyrics that the characters are terrified of the pink elephants, that through their alcohol-induced delirium, they are scared and want out. This is all without mentioning the visuals of the scene. The pink elephants are constantly morphing their shape, meshing into one another and dividing into smaller elephants. They continue their march while this rhythmic beat keeps looping, matching the patterns of their walk. I think the bit that really got me bad as a child was the lookout part, when you see pink elephants surrounding a house, looking in through the windows before they break in and start parading inside the home, even invading another elephant's bedroom. There's also an Egyptian part and a ballet number they perform, and eventually they all turn into cars. It's up on YouTube and you should watch it because it's an experience. Keep in mind that as a child, I would have been watching these on VHS, with all the cracking and distortion that comes along with it. I think I've given enough examples for you to understand where I'm coming from, the type of horror I'm talking about, so we can really move on to the thesis of this video. Part of Vsauce's YouTube original series, Minefield, is an episode called What is the Scariest Thing? Spoilers, it's suffocation. The way he comes to this conclusion is through the study surrounding patient SM046, a woman with a specific type of brain damage that reduced her ability to feel fear. She suffered from this disease, Urbach-Withi, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, which led to her amygdala, bloodborne, being destroyed, and her mental processes for some emotions were eliminated, most notably fear. She was taken in to be studied by science in the early 90s, and from the numerous tests ran, the only time she felt fear was during suffocation through carbon dioxide inhalation. But I think we can go further with these results. You see, SM recorded fear and panic attacks at a much more severe rate than people with a functioning amygdala. I think that this extra fear that suffocation managed to bring was the fear of the unknown. As children, we are the most hungry for knowledge than we are for the rest of our lives. Everything is new and exciting and ready to be understood, but on the other side of the coin, everything is daunting. As humans, we cannot handle not knowing. This is why people seek closure so desperately. We need an ending to the story or some objective fact to tide our mind over with. The feeling of incompleteness leaves us distressed and uncomfortable. And I think this is why the genre of horror where it shouldn't be works so well. It plays on these deep-seated insecurities we hold around our existence, like what happens after death, what is the meaning of life. It grabs onto these insecurities and infests our mind with the most visceral imagery. However, I think there's a certain time in your life where this takes root much stronger. From the ages of around 7 to 13. At this point in development, children have a somewhat solid grasp on life. We understand the general comings and goings of the human experience. Obviously, the understandings of a 12-year-old is not going to be as developed as, say, a 19 or a 30-year-old, but the basis is there. So you sit down as a 7 to 13-year-old, ready to consume some media you have an understanding of, and then it hits. Whether it be the Song of Lavender Town or the Parade of the Pink Elephants, this genre-bending horror permeates through, seeping into the media you believed was safe. It's almost like a tonal jump scare, something far beyond your perceived notion of what X media is supposed to be, and it shatters the comfort you once held. Being young and not understanding why someone would insert concepts like death and grief into a children's franchise, about beating enemies and saving the princess. You start searching for it everywhere. A paranoia starts to loom over everything new to you, questioning its legitimacy as secure, or is it just looking to lure you in again and make you face horrors beyond your comprehension? Is the creator I'm watching gonna add another jump scare in like she did in the Twin Peaks video? No, of course not. I think this type of horror, the earth-shattering, infiltrating your day-to-day life horror, is by far the most effective. There's a reason why people still debate the true meaning of films like The Shining, what sent Jack mad enough to kill his own family, and not the 30th jump scare of the 2018's Nun. It's because we crave answers, and as children, we desire them tenfold, but without them, the fear can infest every facet of our minds. I hope you've enjoyed watching, and as always, I've been Halloween-themed Unijoy, and you have been entertained.